When you are at the place you're saying marriage is holy, not happy, it's done, right? And you may drag it out for another 20 years. People who are happily married don't use that language. People who are not in toxic relationships, I am very happy in my marriage. It's not always perfect. It's not always easy, but most of the time it is.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Baskerville, the author of The Life-Saving Divorce, Hope for People Leaving Destructive Relationships. I've been a Christian divorce recovery leader in churches since 1998. Can you believe it? Over 20 years. And I am so excited to interview today Sarah K. Ramsey. She is a divorce coach, but I met her through an interview she did with the amazing Lundy Bancroft. I got into her Facebook page and I was looking around and looked at her blog and I thought, this woman has got a lot of great things to say. And then later on, I discovered she's a pastor's kid.
I am a pastor's kid. Yeah. Southern Baptist pastor's kid, no less. Yeah, very conservative pastor's child, yes.
She knows what it's like to be a conservative Christian who needs a divorce. So, Sarah, I am going to let you introduce yourself, talk about your blog, your Facebook group, and your coaching. Mm-hmm. And then I'd like to jump right into the same things you were discussing with Lundy, which is, how do I know my husband is really changing?
Right. So yes, I'm Sarah K. Ramsey. I'm a toxic relationship specialist, and I run the podcast Toxic Person Proof, which Gretchen was just on, and I'm super proud. It got ranked as like in the top 5% globally. It has blown up. I just started it during COVID, and it has been amazing. So definitely check out the Toxic Person Proof podcast. I'll also be my book, Toxic Person Proof, will be coming out soon. I'm not sure if it'll be launched by the time this releases, but early 2021. And I run the Facebook group, Finding Love and Success After a Toxic Relationship.
Wow.
So that is
such a great topic.
It is such a great topic and such an important topic. And I framed it on purpose because I want people to know that success can be found after a toxic relationship. It's not like, it feels like that's just like the big final period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah,
and
like
then I got divorced.
It's over, but it's really the beginning.
Right. So I would love to discuss how to know if he's changed or not. It's very easy. Does he actually change? It seems so simple, but is there a consistent pattern of change behavior over an extended period of time? Or is there, hey, let me say the right things so that I don't have to change my behavior? And there's recently someone who, tumultuous dating relationship. They weren't even getting a divorce, tumultuous dating relationship. And, there was like, oh, look at this Christmas present he did for me. Oh, it was so nice. He spent all this time and energy on this Christmas present. That is not the same thing as learning to be less selfish. Right?
Right.
And toxic people can switch between being the victim and the hero. Okay. So when he wanted to blame her for things, he was the victim. But then he needed her to not break up with him, so he became the hero. He did not become less selfish. Right. And that's what's important to note, is that piece of, well, okay, he says he's going to change. Well, did he? The Bible says, do not be hearers of the word, but doers of the word. The fruits of the Spirit. What's the fruits on the tree?
Right.
It's not promises.
Not sayers of the word, but doers of the word.
Yes. And, action speaks louder than words. It's so simple. And so, but I also want to point out that distinction. I had a client, and this guy had stolen money from her. Okay. He'd stolen money from her. And he said, oh, I really don't think you should be alone this Christmas. Let me bring your kids' gifts over. So he wasn't willing to pay back the money he stole, but he was willing to be the hero by spending that money on gifts for her children so he could look like the hero.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
right? But you see
Yeah.
how,
And it'd be easy to fall for that. Because
yes,
look at these expensive gifts.
yes, yes. But he's not making up for, it's not restitution for what he did wrong. It's being the hero,
Got it.
right?
Got
Because then
it.
you clap for Santa bringing the gifts over.
Right.
Nobody claps for, you stole my money, now you brought it back. What do you want? Like there's no heroicness, but it's very hard for women to differentiate. It's very hard.
Right. It's super confusing
Mm-hmm.
because I have people in my private Facebook group who say, wow, I'm totally confused. Now that I've just given up, I no longer love him. I've filed for divorce after all this abuse. Suddenly he wants to change. And I'm so confused. What do I need to do? What would your response be?
Suddenly he wants to manipulate you. This is not new, right? It's a toddler. You took his toy away, and pitching a fit didn't work. So then he's like, "You're my favorite mommy ever," right? And toxic people act like toddlers, right? We expect toddlers to throw tantrums and pull that stuff. It's not appropriate when it's a 48-year-old man. It's not appropriate, and I speak of this. Please don't hear me so far removed from the pain and the hope of you hoping it will be true. But seeing a pattern of changed behavior and really, 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 really hoping you see a pattern of changed behavior are two different things.
What kind of steps do they really need to do to change?
Actually changing. We really make it this complicated thing. And it's like, well, do you get your way sometimes? Do you get to be, I call it being at the top of the pyramid, right? So in a healthy relationship, everyone gets a turn at the top of the pyramid. Great explanation for your kids. I have never, in all ages, as soon as I say it, everyone knows what I'm talking about, even if you're 5 years old, right? It's like, oh, okay. Maybe little Johnny won the ball game, so he gets to pick where to eat. Maybe your daughter, Susan, feels sick, right? So she gets to pick what you watch on TV because she's not feeling well. We understand this. We understand what it means.
All the attention. It's
right.
Appropriate for her to be at the top of the pyramid, for her concerns and needs to trump everyone else's in the family for a period of time.
It's healthy when people take turns at the top. It's not healthy when it's always one person's turn. Right? Right. The only example, maybe a special needs child would kind of almost always be at the top. That's the best example I can think of. Like, when is that ever not true? That's pretty difficult. If you have a special needs child, they would tend to always need to be at the top in some capacity. But if it's a 54-year-old man and he thinks it's always his turn, this is something he learned how to take turns in kindergarten. So you thinking I can be so loving to teach him to teach him to take turns. I can have such good boundaries. He'll learn how to take turns. I can be so forgiving. He'll learn how to take turns. I can be so sexy. He'll learn how to take turns. He didn't learn in elementary school. You think he's going to learn in his 50s?
Right. Exactly.
But we really
feels entitled. He feels entitled to that. Let me ask you this. I get this question all the time. Mm-hmm. What if I don't think that my husband is actually highly motivated to be hurting me or abusing me? He's just clueless, or maybe he's Aspie, he's somewhere on the spectrum, or I don't think he's deliberately trying to hurt me, but everything he does hurts me. What do you say in situations like that?
So the best thing is to know, who does he behave badly in front of? If he only behaves badly behind closed doors, there's 100% chance he knows what he's doing.
Wow. Good point.
100% chance. If he's not calling you a bitch blah, 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 in front of his boss, he knows better. Right.
We, as forgiving, loving people from a strong religious background, we're taught that we have to forgive and forget and go the extra mile over and over and over again, keep reconciling, keep giving them extra chances. Or if it's not for them, it's like, give God more time for a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about that? Do we need to keep forgiving and forgetting? And once we forgive them, does that just wipe the slate clear? And now they have to do something bigger and worse for us to respond?
So I am obviously very strong in like personal integrity, right? In personal integrity. And I think it's important to think, I have tried everything I can do to make this work. I think that's important. It's an important place to leave from. I do believe that personally. I have seen that in women who I mainly work with. But really, when you start asking, it's like, well, have you done everything that you could to make it work? I changed myself 100 times. I manipulated myself like a puppet or something. I became their puppet. I stopped having needs. I stopped doing anything for myself. I stopped. It's like, oh, okay. So then you have done everything you can do to change. Okay.
Yeah.
So you already tried that and it didn't work. Okay.
Right. So
then acting within your integrity. So first acting within your integrity is, have I done everything I can to make this work? I think that's a great, especially if there are children involved, do that first, right? Try that first. Okay. Don't do it for 20 years, right? Because we talked about this on my podcast. At some point when I stood before God, I did not want him to say, Sarah, your legacy was helping other people be better sinners. You brought darkness into the world because when people sinned, you covered it up. You helped them become more selfish. You made yourself small so they could be more selfish. You created this obsessive idol. In fact, I wasn't God to you. You said I was God, and you called yourself loyal, and you called yourself forgiving. But really, that person was God. Mm-hmm. They got to make all your decisions. They became your voice. You didn't listen to me. You listened to them. And at some point within my personal integrity, within your personal integrity, I'm guessing that is not when you stand before God. That is not what you want them to say. And we don't think about it in those terms. But it's like, as soon as you say, oh, you're helping them be more selfish. You're helping them. Oh, so that's kind of like, it sounds like it's your hobby. It's your life. That's your role as a wife, is to help them toxic people become more toxic.
Yeah. We reward them in a lot of ways. When we take on all the blame and all the responsibility, oh, well, he wouldn't have been nasty to me if I hadn't spilled the milk.
Yeah.
We just give him more and more opportunities to be selfish, to be mean, and to push the blame over on us, because we were taught that somehow, well, maybe I didn't speak his love language properly.
I have an article called The Love Language of the Narcissist that everyone should check out. Oh. And it's basically called more. Like, what's a love language of the narcissist? And I use narcissist because everyone calls it's like a blanket term for toxic people right now. But it's like, what's the love language of the narcissist? Do more. The finish line's always moving. And they want to see us doing this work of the relationship.
Right.
It's never enough.
And take on the responsibility. I call it Planet Me. They live on Planet Me, where they get to make all the rules.
Yeah.
And the rules apply to you. They don't, but any rule they don't like, they can break, because they're the rule maker, they're the judge, they're the jury. And as you say, the goalposts keep changing. But on Planet Me, everything they do is right. And everything you do is wrong or stupid or foolish or was designed to inconvenience them in some way.
And when you're talking about Jesus, and it's like they're supposed to be Jesus to you, can you imagine describing Jesus that way? It's Planet Me. I make the rules. I break the rules. I enforce the rules. I tell you the rules. And he was like God, right? And when you describe it that way, and then you think, and that's where it aligns with, you're helping them become more sinful. You're helping them become more selfish. And I know it's hard. Like, I am stuff I'm saying, I'm trying to think of like me hearing this at other points in my life and trying to have grace with that. It's like, but so I'm going to start crying. So much of my message is saying the things that no one said to me and saying the things that I needed to hear. And because what I was hearing is, you're a horrible person, marriage is a covenant. You're going to go to hell. Your children are going to be gay. Your whole life's going to fall apart. You're going to, you're personally putting Jesus on the cross. You're not a Christian. The Bible says, do not let the sun go down in your anger. So if you let the sun go down in your anger, you obviously are an atheist. It was horrific. It was horrific. The things that people told me about
that kind of spiritual abuse is unbelievable. And that's what keeps us in these toxic, abusive marriages that destroy us, destroy our kids, and don't bring any honor to God that I can see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And something, the point, we talked about this on my podcast, but something that's important to note, we kind of have this idea of like, the reputation of the entire church and Jesus's whole reputation rests on whether or not I get a divorce or not.
Right. Right.
And we say, oh, if I get a divorce, everyone is like ruined, and Jesus, well, no one ever want to become a Christian. It's like, whoa. I mean, that is really like making marriage an idol. It's making ourselves bigger than we are and more important than we are, right. And I have never heard someone say, the reason I decided to follow Jesus, because I watched this woman get abused and she kept putting up with it. And I thought, man, if she can put up with abuse, I should love Jesus more. Like, that is craziness. But we almost have in our heads that that's what is going to happen. Like, oh, if I don't get a divorce or we make the church look good, people are going to come to Christ. And when you start having conversations with people who are not in the church, it's like, oh, so they're like, why would we want women to be abused? Why would we want that? Like, why would your church want that? That is a complete turnoff to faith. Not a reason to become faithful.
Right, because we're unjust. We don't seem to be able to tell right from wrong. Mm-hmm. We are mixed up in our values. For example, the whole concept that, divorce is a sign of moral decay.
Yeah.
Yet abuse is just fine. Tolerating an abusive marriage is a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. And people see the hypocrisy in that. They see that, we're not safe, and they wouldn't be safe entrusting themselves to us. Not themselves emotionally or spiritually or physically. They don't want to be part of our churches if we don't seem to have any kind of common sense.
And if you are sending the message, Jesus wants me to be abused, and then you are saying Jesus is loving and you should love Jesus, the message they are receiving is Jesus is not safe. The church is not safe.
Right. That if God is as egotistical and as narcissistic as my spouse who's abusing me, why do I want any more of that? Mm-hmm. And I've found a lot of people who've walked away from their faith because they say, the church won't condone my divorce, but this isn't the God I know. God isn't this way. Mm-hmm. And they've walked away from the church. Oftentimes, at least in my group, 1/3 of the people in my group say, I love the Lord, absolutely, but I can't darken the door of a church because I can't sit there listening to yet another sermon telling me that I was a quitter who took the easy way out. Mm-hmm. When in reality, I tried hard for 20 years in a brutally rage-filled marriage. And, I have now health repercussions from that. My children have been damaged by that. I don't want to be called a quitter who took the easy way out. Mm-hmm. And I can't listen to another sermon like that.
Mm-hmm. And nor should you have to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're hearing sermons like that. I'm sorry that we're not 100 years farther down the road. People like me, people like Gretchen, there's so many people trying to get this message out and trying to clear the clarity and clear the confusion. And we've not been doing it for 100 years, right? I've been really fortunate enough to interview some of the very first, the author of The Verbally Abusive Relationship, the author of Emotionally Abusive Relationship. Like, these were the front runners, 35 years ago. 35 years in the realm of human history. It was not illegal to hit your wife until the 1970s in the United States.
Wow.
We are shockingly young in this conversation. Shockingly young in this conversation.
Yeah, I'm hearing that only now are some states in the U.S. considering coercive control, which is another
California's
word
doing that
for
now. Yeah.
emotional abuse, is now illegal, and
There's
that's
going to need to
important.
be some real, that makes me nervous. I've talked to several lawyers about it too. And I definitely think the courts need more knowledge on this. But I also know how easy it is for toxic people to make it look like, the other person was the problem. I do have this tip or
Right.
trick. If anyone,
Yes.
if you're trying to say, trying to get help from people, any of that sort of thing, or trying to say who was the toxic one, like who's lying, who's telling the truth. They're both saying the other person is toxic. Who's telling the truth? Who's lying? Who is getting the better end of the deal of the relationship? That is
Okay.
almost
Walk us through that.
very easy to see.
Give us an example.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Did one person feel like they were serving? They were always trying to do the right thing. They were always trying to get help. They were always trying to do the marriage retreat. They're always trying to go to this, and the other person's never trying to do anything.
Right.
Was one
Right.
person always out with their buddies, and then the other person at home with the kids?
Right.
Was one person
Sacrificing
sacrificing themselves?
sacrificing their life, their time, their energy, their voice, to make the other person comfortable and happy and at peace, but they never return the favor and sacrifice for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually you can kind of see, like, if you say who's getting the better end of the deal of the relationship, it's like, definitely seems like that person. So, okay, so if that person was getting the better end of the deal of the relationship, why would they want to end the relationship?
Exactly.
Right?
And people don't understand that.
No.
Why would, if you had everything your way, if you could cheat and you could still come home to a hot meal, children who'd been fed and clothed, a warm bed,
a good reputation,
a
solid
good
reputation still. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would you ever leave that? That
Yeah.
seems like having your cake and eating it too.
That's exactly it. And that's it. So one partner is usually having their cake and eating it too. And then one person looks like a complete wreck, because at that point they feel like a complete wreck. And they're just like, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't. He's like, look, she's crazy.
Right.
No.
Right.
No. And an important thing I want to, as I change the conversation, what I want to leave my legacy 100 years from now, though I will not live that long, obviously, that within that conversation is, we talk about toxic relationships or destructive relationships, and it's like stage 3 and 4 stages, right? So think about cancer. What if we only talked about surgery and chemo? We never talked about precancerous cells. We never talked about cancer prevention. We never talked about the early stages of cancer to do something before it got that bad. It'd be a disaster. There's a real reason we try to catch it early. Most of our conversation around toxic relationships is in levels 3 and 4 stages of toxicity, whether it be emotional, physical abuse, financial abuse, infidelity. It's in these very strong, worst case scenario type conversations. Well, of course, if you've been in a really bad situation for all those years, it makes it seem like you're unstable. You're not emotionally well. You're depressed. But then they say, well, she has the mental health issue. She's in stage 3 or 4 cancer. Okay. Who was she at the beginning? Who was she in the precancerous cells?
Right.
And that's where I call it smart girl syndrome versus codependency, because the conversation on codependency is not enough of a conversation.
Right.
Statistically, it's not. Purdue did a whole study. It's like 67% of women are not codependent who have left toxic relationships.
Yeah, it's so good to see that we're being identified as trauma survivors or trauma victims rather than codependents. And I think that's really important. I know we only have a few more minutes here, and I really want you to share your 5 systematic strategies for healing.
Yeah.
Toxic relationships.
So time does not heal all wounds. It's what you do with that time that heals all wounds. Okay.
Good point.
Period. There is no other, that the wait and hope game. It didn't work within the relationship. Don't use it as your healing strategy. Let me just wait, hope, ignore, and deny, and it'll get better on its own. Then you get out of the relationship. Let me wait, hope, ignore, and deny, and and hope it gets better on its own. This is a bad healing strategy. Don't do that, right? This is and healing is also multifaceted, right? So it's healing is multifaceted, right? It is, I see so many people and their healing strategy is like, well, I'm exercising again. And I don't want to sound sarcastic when I say this, right? I'm saying this all the love and giggles and sunshine. Okay. Does everyone who exercises, are they toxic person free? Or they'll say, I'm hiking, I'm getting into nature. Awesome. I haven't seen that study. So everyone who hikes, they're never in toxic relationships. It's awesome. I'm going to start hiking. Right. And I don't mean to make fun. I mean, I do mean to make fun of ourselves and like the silly things I tried too, because it's like, oh yeah, that's not really a healing strategy, is it? And I talk about becoming toxic person proof. How about obsessively studying toxic people? That is also a bad strategy, right? Because if you lined up 13-year-old girls and said, hey, if he lies and cheats and calls you names and takes your money and, has a real rage problem, but only rages in private, he would never do it for anybody, are any of these red flags to you? Or he keeps you up at night and doesn't let you sleep, or, make sure your children are turned against you. Anybody see these as red flags? And I'm not trying to be ugly, but then as women, we see red flag lists and it's like, whoa, I didn't know that was a red flag. Did you not? Did you not? Or did your kindness, did your intelligence, did your loyalty, did your faith get turned against you? And you talked yourself out of them in the name of Christian faith, in the name of loyalty, in the name of kindness, in the name of forgiveness.
Right. Did we took something really bad and we reframed it in our own mind as something good. It's not that he wakes me up in the middle of the night for no good reason. He just wants to be with me night and day. I mean, we find,
or God's helping shape me.
Yes.
Marriage is to be holy, not happy.
Right.
If you are at the place you're saying marriage is holy, not happy, it's done. Right. And you may drag it out for another 20 years. People who are happily married don't use that language. People who are not in toxic relationships, I am very happy in my marriage. It's not always perfect. It's not always easy, but most of the time it is.
Right.
Very easy. Like just easy. We're just nice to each other. Like that's it. No games, no manipulation, right? Now, hard things in our life happened. We just went through COVID 2020. He used to travel for work. Now we both work from home. This creates different changes and dynamics, and the kids are virtually schooled. So we're all here, right? But do you hear how different that is than someone turning me against myself?
Right. Those are external pressures.
Yes.
Those are, accidents or illness or natural disasters or, job loss or something like that. It has nothing to do, you're dealing with something outside of the couple. But when the person causing the trouble is inside the couple, that is really toxic. And
it's contempt, right? When someone's contemptuous towards you or someone's lying to you. And we had my stepson was in a bad car wreck where the other child died. Right. That was that was 2 months ago. Right. Another family member had a stroke. Right. Another family member died. This is in the last 2 months of my life. You're like, wow, how are you handling all that? This is nothing compared to being turned against yourself. And I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm saying that is that bad. Those destructive relationships are that bad. When you've lost trust in yourself, when it's like, I can't figure out what's true and not true. That's terrifying. And healthy relationships don't put you in that situation.
A healthy relationship, a healthy home should be a safe nest.
Yeah.
But when your nest isn't safe, there's real problems.
And hiking doesn't fix it. An exercise plan doesn't fix it. Lunch with the girlfriends doesn't fix it. A new hobby doesn't fix it. That's a distraction, and it's fine. I love to exercise. Well, sometimes, but I do exercise. I do spend time with friends when it's safe to. I do all these things. I'm not saying those things are bad. Of course not. I'm saying those things there's that time. It's like, okay, this is a red flag and I'm going to figure out a way I can ignore it. I'm going to figure out some strategy where I can use my faith. I need to just be loyal to Jesus. I can use my kids. I don't want to face that. So let me figure out some way to make it okay. Right? We have to start acting. we talk about 5 systematic strategies. Here's the one systematic strategy. Act in integrity to yourself. True integrity of faith is saying, I do not help spread darkness in the world. I do not help people become better sinners. And I do not lie. I don't lie to others, and I don't lie to me.
Yep. Tell us about the rest of your strategies.
Whatever we want now. Yeah. So I pushed off my Q&A for a few more minutes. So I do want to talk about smart girl syndrome. Okay. And within the context of your listeners, I'm going to call it good girl syndrome. Right. And that's, I just need to be more, because I don't think women who've been in toxic relationships are stupid. No. I really don't. I hope you don't think I'm stupid, right? Or bad communicators, or not loving enough, or not sexy enough, or not giving enough. And I make a joke that, somebody cheated on Beyonce, right? And it's like, man, was Beyonce not like cool enough? Like, why did she get cheated on? She was beautiful. She was amazing. She was powerful. She was rich. She was all this, like, was she not good enough that she got cheated on? Or maybe Beyonce wasn't the problem. Maybe the person who cheated on her was the problem. Right. But we have that good girl syndrome, right? Like, I just need to work harder. Because in other areas, if you're talking about math class, so I was a classical piano player, right? So at first I couldn't play Beethoven, and then I worked harder and worked harder and worked harder. And then I could play Beethoven. Right. When you build businesses, when you write books, when you whatever, at first you start and you can't do it. Then you think, I will work harder and figure out how to solve this problem, and then things will be better. Insert toxic person. I can't do it. It's not going well. I'm going to work harder and solve this problem, and things will be better. That didn't work. I'm going to work harder and solve this problem, and things will be better. That didn't work. New Bible study. I'm going to work harder and solve this problem. Things will get better. New Christian book. I'm going to work harder and solve problem. Things will get better. Figure out a new Bible verse. Figure out a new lingerie. Figure out a new schedule. Figure out a new way of being less of yourself. And they quickly become the idol. They become the idol in your life. They become God. They become the voice. They become the most important thing in your life. And the most important thing in your life becomes trying to figure out a way for them not to be sinners, because they're like sinning all over the place. Like, I get to be selfish. I get to be angry. I get to blame. I get to be this. I get to be a good cheater. And she's just covering it up for me. And she's making me dinner. And she's afraid I'm going to cheat on her. So she's putting out every time I want her to. This is good. And then we say, well, I just wish he loved me enough to change. He's having a really good time. He's having a very good time. And he's making you feel small, and he's making you feel horrible. And I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. And it is scary to think about making those changes in your life. But think about that alignment. Just switch that good girl syndrome. Let me work harder and harder and harder. Okay. And switch it to personal integrity, because that probably aligns with you. I don't align with like, you deserve better, even though, I mean, you do, but that just doesn't seem to resonate with like good girls, right? It's like, well, it feels, when you say, I don't want to be the person who brings darkness into the world. I'm covering up sin. I'm going to stand before God and say, he said, what did you do with the life I gave you? I covered up. I made sure that no one else knew about their sin. Mm. And I made sure that I bend myself and change myself in 1,000 different ways so they didn't have to face their sin. So they didn't have to be accountable for their sin. Mm. I help enable their sin, Jesus. Are you proud of me?
Ooh, that's a really powerful way of saying it. I've never heard anyone say it that way. And that just really hits home. I think, when you put it that way, we really have to come face to face with the fact that we helped enable it, even though we didn't intend to, even though our motives were so pure. Our motives were to have this great marriage. Our motives were to honor God. Our motives were to show that we were spiritually mature. Mm-hmm. And in reality, what actually happened is we swept all of their bad behavior under the carpet. We covered for it. We fell on our own sword. We never told anyone. So our divorce was a surprise to almost everyone. And because we kept hoping and praying, because we were godly people, that God would do a miracle. So we never wanted to tell anyone for fear that we'd have to take all that back when the miracle actually happened. And what you're saying is, by even with trying to do things right, we have accidentally done things very, very wrong. And we've added destruction to this world rather than adding good things to the world.
And I'm saying in my life, like, I am not pointing a finger, I am raising my hand. There were people who needed truth and I gave them love. There were people who I took advice from, or I wasn't mature enough in my wisdom and discretion. And I was just like, well, I just want to be like good and loving. I didn't want to have discretion. I didn't want to be wise. And so I hope no one hears me saying like I'm blaming you for anything. You got tricked.
Right.
I got tricked, right? Like there's been a list of people in my life who tricked me, who I thought they were good and they weren't. And I went to them for advice and I tried to, and I got tricked. I got conned.
Right. Right.
Don't hear me say I'm blaming you, but now what are you going to do? Right. So I always say, I don't blame you for your past. I do blame you for your future.
Right. Well, we were given all these messages from the day we were born. We were, told the same messages that these formulas would work, that when this happens, the best thing to do is pray harder, try harder, fast more, be more agreeable, be more sexually available, and these will definitely work. And nobody ever told us, what do you do when these things don't work? Because they don't work for a huge number of people. And the answer isn't keep trying. The answer is something different. But then when our churches slammed the door and told us that God hates all divorce, regardless of what Paul said or Jesus said, because both of them opened the door to various reasons for divorce. But God hates divorce, so you're automatically a spiritual failure if you go this direction. So we end up being stuck. We get trapped by these messages that have been handed down to us and every other Christian for at least the last 40 years, and nobody has any other answers. And I truly believe that Jesus is right. He was saying, divorce was allowed for the hard-heartedness of your hearts. You were such stubborn sinners. God had to allow divorce, or you were going to destroy your spouse.
And no one is going to become a Christian because you put up with abuse. Like, that is the point I just want to drive home, right?
Yeah.
Talk to non-Christians. Ask them, hey, when you think about me leading by integrity, or, me being an example for Christ, what is more of an example for you? Stopping a bad situation and saving my kids, or putting up with abuse?
Right. And lying about it to others and to myself.
Right. And to yourself. And it is to yourself. Yeah. I recognize, because people are like, oh, I didn't mean to lie. Right. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying you have lied to yourself. We find those loopholes and close the doors to find any reason for the flag not to be read. Yeah. And everyone does it. Christian, non-Christian. I mean, that's what a whole book is about. Toxic person proof is like, how do you start shutting some of those doors to truly be toxic person proof and not get into this type of situation again? And it's certainly not, we talk about it a lot in the context of romantic relationships, but those people also go to work, and those people also run banks, and those people also are on TV, and those people also coach your kid's ball team. Right. So it's a much bigger conversation than even just divorce. Right.
Well, no, you're not be swindled. Yeah. You are a wealth of information. How can people get in touch with you? You're a coach. You do individual coaching. You have groups. Yeah. Talk to us. Give us all the ways we can get all the ways.
So a great info to get more about me, my podcast, Toxic Person Proof. it's going like, oh yeah, so definitely check out the podcast Toxic Person Proof. My Facebook group, Finding Love and Success After a Toxic Relationship. Okay. I run the Wondrous Woman program, which you can jump on a call with me, sarahkramsey.contact. /contact, Sarah K. Ramsey. Just go to my website, Sarah with an H, /contact, and talk about. I'm very much into strategic healing, strength-based healing, a healing strategy, not wandering around in the dark hoping something works, not talking about your problems, but solving your problems. Right?
I love that, because people, if they don't grasp and aggressively go after healing and improvement. Yeah. It doesn't happen just by being passive and sitting there. Healing and a new mindset and having better boundaries takes work, and you've got to reach out there and claim it.
And that work is a gift, right? That work is integrity. That work is wisdom. That work is leading by example. That work is like truly being a Christian, right? I have been married and I've been divorced and I've been remarried. I've been all these things. I get emails every day. You are a gift from God. Mm-hmm. As a divorced person, as a person who's been completely burned by the church. Like, my story is still almost worse than nearly anyone's I know. It's just been completely burned, and thinking, oh, I'll never be able to serve God again. I'll never be able to do anything again. Now I get emails every day because now I'm living in my integrity. I don't lie to myself.
And what you're saying is so powerful. It was when you had your nose dragged in the dirt, when you were condemned by the religious leaders, like the religious leaders of Jesus' time did to him. Only then did you have an amazing ministry. God took the destruction and the condemnation and the stigma and the shame, and now the message is really powerful. And I'm sure you are bringing more people to the Lord than you ever did before.
I'm bringing people to the Lord, and I'm giving children back their mothers. So now, okay, Sarah, what life did you give? I could either say, okay, I've been an idol to all these people who are toxic, blah, blah, blah. Or it's, I gave children back their mothers, Jesus. I gave children back their mothers. Their mothers felt destructed. And, they felt, and I hate to say resurrected because that seems like disrespectful, but like came back up out of the ashes and came back to life again. And so their children got mothers that were alive instead of mothers that were dead inside. That was my legacy. That is my legacy. Which one do you want? And so anyone's listening from a past life, no regrets. Preach it to the rooftop, right? And I said I was going to do this work, and they just basically said, no, the only work you can do is what we want you to do. It's incredibly awful. And the worst thing I did was listen to them, and the best thing I did was stop listening to them.
Ooh, that is so powerful.
Go on record.
I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure, and keep up the good work. You're doing very good work, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.